Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. Welcome once again to Courage the Cowardly Dog Month, and what is going to be the second to last video of this month. And in this video, I'll be looking at the top 10 Courage the Cowardly Dog double episodes. By that I mean what do I mean by that? Well, it's kind of a little bit more complicated because what I've actually referred to so far over the course of Courage the Cowardly Dog Month videos is uh, is actually have actually been labeled as segments, and it is and this show was aired 2 segments at a time in order to keep the with 2 exceptions, The Mask and The Tower of Dr. Zalost. In order to keep my terminology consistent, however, I'm going to talk about these episodes as they were aired as double episodes, and look at all of them from a quality perspective and see which one is the best. Given I've already done videos on the on the individual episodes or individual segments, you might think that it's just as easy as picking out the segments that had episodes in the top 10. And I have to say that is not that is not exactly that simple. I also want to look at synergy, at how well and at how well these two segments or these 2 episodes uh, coalesce and contrast in order to make an in order to make an um, in order to present interesting and maybe even contrasting stories. That is the aim for this. That is the aim for this video, to look at to look at two singular narratives at a time, and see how well how well they're put together and synergized. For those of you who are curious, if I were to also include the maxi episodes, i.e., The Tower of Dr. Zalost and The Mask, The Tower of Dr. Zalost would obviously be number one because I've been heaping praise upon that episode throughout all of the years in which I've done Courage the Cowardly Dog Month, and Mask would be, I think, somewhere in the lower half, maybe number 7 or number 8. Anyway, with those details out of the way, it's time I delve into the actual meat of the video. But before I talk about the 10 best, I first want to look at some honorable mentions. Season 1, Episode 1, A Night at the Cat's Motel and Cajun Granny Stew. These two, given these two were the first episode that aired, it was very important that they get the actual feel, the vibe of the show just right. And for the most part, I actually think this is the, these two were basically the best first airing of the show airing of this this show could have had. Because they are they are quite adept at showcasing the strengths that this premise would carry, and also how the narratives in general would potentially work. Even though the episodes themselves do have certain flaws, they were still interesting enough to watch. Both in and of themselves as well as together. The second honorable mention is season 1, episode 9, Queen of the Black Puddle and Everyone Wants to Direct. This is a this is another interesting dichotomy in that the figure that is threatened pretty much changes. Changes within these episodes. With Queen, it's Eustace. With everyone, it's Muriel. And really, I think the contrast these episodes bring in terms of their in terms of their build up is quite interesting. Even though fret levels are somewhat comparable. Also, the general aesthetics they go for, I find to be surprisingly compatible. So for that reason, this episode or this double episode is makes it to the honorable mentions. And finally, last of the honorable mentions, season 2, episode 2, The Curse of Shirley and Courage in the Big Stinkin' City. The Curse of Shirley is, I think, the first episode that really explores Eustace as a character, looking at what exactly, looking at what exactly makes him the way he is, and why it is that he adopts his the variety of attitudes that he actually does. But really, the heavy hitter in this combo is Courage in the Big Stinking City, which is one of two episodes that I think got either an Emmy win or an Annie win, primarily for its soundtrack. Even though the show in general has been praised for having a pretty good soundtrack, I think it's safe to say that this episode is at the very least in a higher echelon. Maybe has the best, maybe even has the best soundtrack, but I haven't really compared them. I might, I might do so, but but I very much doubt that to be the case because, because I still think because that would be just my assessment of it. Now, and even though all of these episodes are basically my assessment of it, I don't really have any more objective or external criteria by which I can gauge the quality. So yeah. Regardless, a well-deserved award and an interesting juxtaposition at play here. Also, one which again features a contrast between who exactly is targeted. Even though both episodes end with Eustace in a not as great position. Anyway, now it's time to get into the list itself. Let me check a little bit my OBS. Yeah, fine. Starting with number 10, season 2, episode 9, The Serpent of Evil River and The Transplant. Both of these are interesting because they represent somewhat interesting subversions to the typical narrative. Serpent of Evil River. First of all, it has a very effective use of Carmen by Georges Bizet, and and it really plays into that subversion that Courage very much became known for, where all the monsters or all the villains aren't directly malicious. They simply have they simply operate on a different premise compared to other people, and it is really in understanding that premise that the episode really comes together. Not to mention it actually delivers an intriguing, compelling villain within the captain who actually hunts Carmen. And then the transplant. I have to say the transplant is really mainly here because of how it manages to merge its comedy with its horror, particularly its body horror, with how with how the with how with what the what the monster of this episode is capable of doing. But funnily enough, after that horror moment, the show then this episode then delves into more of a comedic segment, and that comedic segment is actually is actually played with very effectively and very intriguingly. And it is for that reason that it is that contrast between these episodes between these segments that I think makes the episode, or this double episode, I really should get my terminology straight. It is that contrast, and it is that this juxtaposition between how they both play with the between how they both play with the with the general impressions of the show that makes it that makes this episode stand out. Okay, moving ahead. At number 9, season 1, episode 2, The Shadow of Courage and Dr. LeQuack, Amnesia Specialist. I've I've had a lot of praise to heap on both of these episodes, and one of the most interesting thing is that even though these episodes really operate upon different framing devices, they both still very effectively utilize both the horror and the comedy aspects of the show, both taking a look at home invasion horror stories, and playing around with their specifics, making for an intriguing and dynamic narratives that are exciting to follow, and that very effectively hold the audience's attention. So for that reason, this episode, this combination of segments, makes it to number 9. At number 8, we've got The Magic Tree of Nowhere and Robot Randy, season 2, episode 1. Every time a show goes to a different season, that is a moment of change, because every time that happens, the creators, the personnel behind it, has proven that they have the ability to synergize, and that their work can deliver some spectacular, some intriguing results. So when it comes to a new season, the pressure is on to do that all over again. With this season 2 premiere, a lot of those pressures, or a lot of those fears were very much alleviated, with Magic Tree of Nowhere very effectively showcasing the very villainous side that Eustace can embody, and not to mention all of the developments that result from the influence of the tree itself. And then we reach Robot Randy, which very much is done in that vein of and in that comfort zone of John Dilworth, where he takes 50s sci-fi horror and makes it come to life, but also adding his own more personal twist, and allowing Randy to become oddly humanized through the not necessarily through the through the ways in which he moves the plot forward, but in his quiet moments, where he doesn't think anyone is anyone is watching, and when he thinks about his own position. So this is a great contrast episode as well. One that showcases one of the leads of this show being very villainous, and one that shows one of the villains of the piece actually having perhaps a more altruistic or more disengaged, non-violent side to him. Moving on, at number 7, we got season 3, episode 12, The Quilt Club and Swindling Wind. Quilt Club is actually made it in my top 10 episodes, and spoiler alert, pretty much all of them except for the Tarot Dr. Zolost will show up at some point in the in the rest of this list. The Quilt Club is obviously the heavy hitter within this duo, but Swindling Wind also has its strengths, primarily by being among the stronger episode of a pretty weak season, and it arguably showcases Shirley when she is at her uh, most villainous, or really it showcases her. Really showcases how she relies on magic in order to, um, in order to, uh, uh, in order to build her reputation, and to that extent, and to that extent, survive. An interesting exploration of her, of her own, uh, of her own approach to how she handles the world. And I'm just now noticing, just exactly what kind of hand is actually depicted here. Five aces. Well, technically this one's a joker, but that's the part of the joker in poker. It can be whatever. It can be whatever card the it can be whatever card the hand holder decides it to be. And Quilt Club, I've already sung its praises. I do not need to, I do not need to do that again. And for how it manages to build its horror, and its very climactic conclusion. At number 6, we've got Night of the Weremole and Mother's Day. This is a this is a very this is a very interesting contrast of episodes, and one that I think works better than other episode pairs that heavily contrast each other, such as Night at Cat's Motel and Cajun Granny Stew, because both of them delve into something unique and meaningful to the series in and of itself. Night of the Weremole, as I mentioned in my review of every season 1 episode, is very effective at delivering a uh, werewolf type story, and handling its somewhat ridiculous premise with with a lot of both gravitas and humor, thereby representing one of the strongest crystallizations of the actual theme the episode was the actual theme the show was going for. Mother's Day, by contrast, is not exactly a horror piece, but it is very emblematic of characterization, and of how that and of how the how the figures within the book within the series interact with each other, also deepening the theme. One of the characterization themes that are not actually deepening as much as establishing, one of the main characterization themes that goes on to define the rest of the series. It's partly hurt people, but it is but more precisely, it is a but it's still but beyond that, it is an an interesting and an interesting an interesting presentation upon about factors of influence, and how those flow through the overall narrative, and it all starts here. Moving ahead, at number 5, season 1, episode 7, King Ramses' Curse and the Clutching Foot. And I have to say, King Ramses' Curse very much carries this double episode, because the Clutching Foot is not great. While I will say it does have its its beginning segment, which I think is very much the best, where where Eustace struggles with his foot problem, which then goes on to encompass him. But after that point, it just becomes a somewhat less convincing, somewhat less convincing adventure and blackmail story. Whereas King Ramses' Curse, as I've said, very much very much covers the segment by being one of the most iconic episodes of this series. not just in terms of its villain and how he acts, but also in how the episode itself paces all of the various threats and issues that the lead characters, end up end up facing throughout, which I have to say was I have to say led to a very engaging and obviously very memorable uh, episode. Moving ahead, just shy of the top three, at number 4 we've got season 1 episode 12, The Revenge of the Chicken from Outer Space and Journey to the Center of Nowhere. This episode, again, is very much carried. This double episode is once again featured carried by the first, by the first segment, because I've already talked about revenge and how it once again utilizes Delors' main inspiration of 50s sci-fi horror, but instead of a more personal or instead of a more personal or more sympathetic twist, the chicken is still very much presented as monstrous or trying to utilize violence, of wanting to wanting to get revenge, because after all that is in the title, and the ways in which that revenge is depicted, how it's built up, and how how that pursuit ends up fueling the development of this episode and the the plot of this episode, combined with that excellent driving score. It's it is simply very exciting and very engaging to look into and to watch. I can't help but find it, and I can't help but think of it as the best segment of the best standalone segment of season 1. Contrast that with Journey to the Center of Nowhere, which I have to say isn't spectacular, but it is well made. It has a very intriguing use of the Flight of the Valkyries theme, and then the and the debate between the villains of the piece, while not fascinating, is still very entertaining, and it once again plays into the thing Courage is most well known for, which is about finding the finding the humanity within someone who opposes you, and which is played quite quite interestingly and in a and in an exciting fashion. So for that reason, and so even though these two episodes don't really work that well together, while they are both arguably talked about revenge, they both still have a pretty solid combination of both comedy and action. Though the exact mixture is a little bit different, I think it still fits both, and the overall combination is still strong enough to carry it up to number 4. At number 3, the bronze medal goes to season 2, episode 12, The House of Discontent and The Sand Whale Strikes, aka the Eustace is a Dick episode pair. There are plenty of other episodes that are about Eustace being a dick, but in most other episodes that is incidental. Here, this is absolutely the this is absolutely the driving force of the of this of both of these segments, and therefore of the double episode. The House of Discontent, I've already talked about it as being one of the best episodes of the show, and especially one of the best episodes of season 2, with how it manages to escalate the threat, and then how at its climax it manages to be very hard hitting, very effective, and and really highlight the and really highlight the threat and the menace that is that is presented throughout that. And I'm not gonna say that ending I'm not gonna say that ending carries the show, but it does very much put a very elegant bow on top. So how do you follow up on that? Well, with an episode that leans a little bit more into the comedy, and one that actually manages to segment the plot and the tension uh, a little bit more broadly, while also injecting a little bit of a little bit more humor. The episode is once again about arguably about Eustace. I'll refrain. This episode isn't really about Eustace being a dick, but but rather it's about how his background influenced him becoming a dick. And in how that ends up influencing things that happen to him. Also, I think this is episode. Also, I think this is the first. This is the first time when Eustace's mom actually ends up having a somewhat heroic role within the series. But even then, it's merely an alliance of convenience, and and uh, the actual battle, the actual duel, the actual action sequence between the Sand Whale and between Courage and Ma is built up in a very fun but mostly comedic manner, which sorry about that. Which I have to say I found very rewarding to look at, and the combination of these two episodes really manages really showcases another one of Courage's strengths. It's the fact that it manages to keep its own its own style, its own flavor, its own themes, while also being so versatile within the narrative approaches that it takes on. At number 2, silver medal goes to season 1, episode 4, Demon in the Mattress and Freaky Fred. I almost don't need to say anything else because really both of these are iconic in their own way. With Freaky Fred in particular being a metaphor for for familial abuse, which is a theme that has been running uh, went on to run throughout throughout the entire series with with Eustace and with his background, and how he manages to and how Courage manages to break out of that is very much represented in how he uh, uh, navigates his encounter with Fred. Even though it doesn't end, gracefully, he still has some level of still has some level of his own understanding of himself that isn't corrupted. He is still he still stands valiant in the end, so to speak. And then there's Demon in the Mattress, which you know I have to reward it surely for the audacity of portraying of parodying the Exorcist uh, on a on a kids show. Something that 26 years before that was considered so abhorrent that there were actual ambulances next to movie theaters because people thought that it would be so disturbing that it would physically cause people to be sick, and now a generation later is shown is shown to children, but it does. And while the horror is arguably somewhat diminished, the actual pacing and the actual menace that the episode presents is is still done quite well, and is still um, and it's still done in a captivating manner that I find, that looking back on it, I find to be, I find to be intriguing, particularly in the ways that, in the ways in which it twists and turns. However, exciting and iconic as these two episodes are, they are not the best. They are not the best double episode. Instead, that honor goes to the number one, the gold medal, season 4, episode 13, Remembrance of Courage Past and Perfect. Talk about finishing strong. These two episodes are, again easily both, both within the top 10 for a variety of different reasons. I'm gonna start with the weaker of the two, which I have to say is unfortunately perfect, but it is the one that one that most directly touches upon the mental toll that that comes upon Courage, and on how he manages to how he manages to navigate that. Keep in mind that this episode still managed to deliver one of the most iconic iconic sound bites or visual moments of the entire series, even though by then the series was practically over. So yeah, so it once again still has that ability to touch its audience, to resonate with them. And then we go to Remembrance of Courage Past, which, wow, is very much the best segment length episode, and it could really only be the last episode because it very much goes against the intro of the series, which says that Courage has been abandoned as a pup. But actually, it turns out he wasn't abandoned. He was he instead. How do I put this? Was an abduction survivor, so to speak, and he found a loving home with Muriel. Less so with Eustace, I have to say, even though he is around from time to time. And I think and really the development and really the way the story is presented in both the past and the future, and how how Courage acts as the bridge point between them, and the ways in which the narrative tension develops, escalates, and is resolved both in the past and the future. All of those synergize magnificently. I would say perfectly, but only that's a little bit overkill. But beyond that, beyond looking at the individual episodes, taking a step back, we see that both of them are actually about the lead character of this show. And even though a lot has been made, a lot can be said about him, and there are plenty of episodes that could be said to directly be about Courage and about what he is capable of presenting. These are both episodes that really directly go into what it is that make him a distinctive and meaningful figure within animation history, and therefore it represents the perfect, and yeah, I have no problem saying that, the perfect neat little bow that very much caps off this look into this world, and concludes in an intriguing and memorable manner what it is that very much characterizes this episode. And yeah, that was it. That was my list of the 10 best Courage the Cowardly Dog double episodes, or should I say airing episodes. I hope you've enjoyed my list. If you did, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to my list or the concept behind it, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I mainly talk about books, literature, or the printed word, a link to which you can find in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I'll suggest you check out should you choose to. If instead you want to hear me ramble a little bit more, not just about Courage or not just about animation, but a variety of other stuff like movies, games, and occasionally politics, well then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog. It's varied enough for, I would say, most of your tastes. If none of those possibilities sound, none of those avenues sound interesting to you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want with the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And that was all I had to say. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.